Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the SAG-AFTRA live stream on YouTube. To stay informed about all of our live stream and video events, we invite you to subscribe to this channel. You can go ahead and do that right now. Today, we present the President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live stream, Coping with Rejection for Performers. We'll be pausing throughout as we have a pair of interpreters, Mara Bassani Santamaria and Sharon Pierre-Louis, with us today to translate into American Sign Language. Mara and Sharon will be switching off periodically throughout today's discussion. The presentation will begin momentarily. If you have questions that you would like to direct to today's guest, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. And I'd like to welcome today's our president and host, Gabrielle Carteris.
Thank you, Shira. Thank you so much, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited about today's conversation, coping with rejection for performers. I can't say it because I hated that so much, but that's how it feels sometimes. So whether you're an actor, a dancer, a singer, a stunt person, or wherever you work in the arts, I think as human beings, we can all relate to the fact that hearing no is never fun. After all, we all need to be seen and heard. We actually want to be accepted, but we also know that rejection is a part of life. So dealing with rejection, though it's never easy, particularly when the plans for our future and dreams for our careers are everything, where they feel that they're at stake, it really doesn't feel comfortable. So we know that being a performer in the business can be challenging. At times it can be less about your talent, more about your age or your physical traits or whatever you have no control over. I think that we've all been witness to the fact that opportunity, though, can really happen at any time because the industry is full of bloomers. It's actually full of possibilities. So the goal here is to keep striving. It's for us to know that ultimately, the only thing that we can really control is how much effort we put in and how our process to respond to feedback, how we handle that. So we're here today to shift mindsets towards the positive. We're going to share some helpful tips, innovative ways to handle what feels like rejection, but maybe it's just a different choice, so that we can stay optimistic and actually move forward with hope and with vision. So we are partnered and joined by our friends at the Actors Fund, who will highlight some methods to stay encouraged and focused on the positive things. We're going to hear about ways to overcome fear. Yay. Tips on how to stop self-rejecting, methods to not internalize and criticize, and so much more. So you can just keep your eyes on the prize and keep working. So if you're not already familiar with the Actors Fund, the organization is an indispensable, deeply significant part of the entire entertainment community. It offers programs that actually help people across the country to solve problems and to make positive change in their lives. The Actor Fund actually understands the unique challenges of working in the arts and work to serve all entertainment professionals with services that address our community's unique and essential needs. We invite you to learn more about their personalized health insurance counseling, guidance, enrollment support, along with their many other programs that really could be beneficial to you. You can visit their website at actorsfund.org. That is actorsfund.org. So the most important thing is that you do not, and I really mean this, do not count yourself out. For every new day, there is a possibility. We've seen it happen. Maybe you've even done it yourselves. You know, rejection is not the same thing as failure. It's just an opinion, personal preference maybe for somebody. And even with failure, one can always try again, using each instance as an opportunity to learn and grow. So I hope that you leave this session with more joy in your hearts and feeling both inspired and invigorated. With that said, I would like now to introduce our extraordinary colleague, wonderful human being, Christopher Bloodworth. It's so nice to have you with us, Christopher. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Christopher is the National Director for the Career Center at the Actors Fund. He's it's a national organization that supports all professionals in performing arts and entertainment. As the Chief Workforce Development and Training Expert, he develops the policies, theoretical approach, and service modalities that support the 3,000 individuals who utilize these services annually. Prior to joining the Actors Fund, Christopher served as the Director of Education and Workforce Development at Stanley M. Isaac Neighborhood Center. He's also served in leadership roles at Catholic Charities Brooklyn, Queens, and in the corporate sector at TIAA CREF, or TIAA-CREF, and he proudly serves as the on the boards of the New York City Education and Training Coalition and the International Organization for the Transition of Professional Dancers. In addition to his formal roles, Christopher is a writer, he is a photographer, podcast host, and avid mentor to several young adults throughout New York City. No slacker here. We're so happy to have you with us. For those of you who are watching online, if you have questions about today's discussion, please email us at pteoe@sagaftra.org. Again, that's pteoe@sagaftra.org. So with that said, Christopher, thank you so much again for being here. We are really honored to have you, and take it away.
Thank you, President Carteris. I really appreciate everyone responsible for coordinating today's event. I'm honored to be here and to speak to an experience, as you so articulately express, everyone experiences as they are pursuing a dream. We all know that rejection is complicated, but it's manageable. And as you mentioned, the Actors Fund is a resource to everyone who is a part of SAG-AFTRA. And if you find that you are experiencing some challenges with rejection and you may need a little bit of support outside of your own personal counsel, know that you can reach out to us and we will be happy to support you as you are navigating through your challenges. Okay, so I'm going to use a PowerPoint to take us through this discussion on rejection. And so I'm going to begin to share my screen now so that we are able to understand what we hope to accomplish from today's discussion. All right, let's get this going. All right, great. So let's get started. Our agenda today, we are looking to define rejection. That's the first thing that we are looking to do. We also want to identify some common responses to rejection. We want to recognize the emotional signs of rejection, or recognize when we are within rejection, the feelings of rejection. And we want to highlight some strategies for coping with rejection. I've selected 8 for us to speak through today, but that's essentially what we are aiming to do with our conversation today. So let's first define rejection. I have this belief that you have to have a basic understanding of a word, phrase, or condition before you are functionally able to practice the skills necessary to cope with it. Because rejection is experienced, the knowledge of its meaning is more tacit sometimes than explicit. We feel it, but we do not always understand what we feel, why we feel it, how to manage it, or where it originates. The practice of deep diving into our feelings and emotions helps us to understand ourselves better, act quickly when needed, and communicate more effectively with those around us. So, right at the start, I'm encouraging each of you participating in this conversation to develop a practice of identifying the emotional clues that destabilize you and begin the task of learning the what, when, where, why, and how that emotion or emotion reacts when stimulated, okay? So first, rejection is a noun. It's the derivative of the verb reject, which means to refuse, to accept, consider, submit to, take for some purpose, or use. Also, it is a feeling that can elicit the negative emotions of shame, sadness, and/or grief, and many, many more, right? So as you might have gleaned from this definition and your own experience, rejection is experienced personally. Regardless of the setting, romantic, social, or professional, rejection almost immediately affects our thinking, floods us with negative reactive emotions, erodes our sense of self, and disrupts our fundamental feeling of belonging. This is true whether the rejection we experience is large or small. And some people really begin to think that the smaller the rejection is, the less significant it is. But the reality is rejection always hurts, and it usually hurts us more than we expect it to or want it to. And for a lot of us, that's problematic because we'd rather not feel the feelings of rejection. So one might ask, why? Why does reaction to rejection affect us so deeply? One, it ranks among the most potent and distressing of day-to-day events people experience each day. I want to take a minute and think about social media. There was a survey that was put on Twitter that found that 76% of the respondents would rather break an arm than be broken up with. Only 24% would brave the treacherous waters of dissolving a relationship over the physical fracture of their arm. Why is that, right? Although they're very different, the physical pain and the pain from rejection rely on a neural overlap in the regions of the brain that activate when you experience painful rejection, right? So rejection and physical pain are the same to your brain. That's an important thing to think about, right? Also, this neural overlap that we're talking about that happens in the brain, it doesn't differentiate between physical and or emotional. Our brain actually believes rejection is a physical attack on the body. So when you're in the throes of rejection, your brain does not recognize that what is happening to you is not happening at a physical level. Your brain responds as if the body is being attacked, right? And memories from previous rejections combine with new rejections and reinforce a pervading emotional story. So I want to take a step back and I want you to think about what might happen if someone were to move as if they were going to strike you. It is more than likely that your first reaction would be to protect yourself. Your body would move in ways that would prevent the physical strike from actually hurting you. When we hurt emotionally, the same reaction occurs internally. Our mental and emotional selves look to move as far from the hurtful situation as humanly possible to protect us from the looming danger. Sorry, moved too fast. I want you to also, if we were to expand on this broken arm example, right? A lot of people would prefer to have their arm broken than to actually have someone break up with them. And a few months, after breaking your arm, your body heals and you're typically as good as new. The emotional pain associated with a rejection, however, can linger on for decades if we don't address it and learn how to deal with the emotional wound it opens. So it's crucial that performing artists understand how they generally respond to rejection. So that's one thing that I want you to think about is how do you respond to rejection? And we're going to talk some about that in a few minutes, but just start thinking, how do you respond to rejection? And so I'm going to speak now to a number of common responses to rejection, but I want you to keep in mind that many of us develop over time a combination of responses to events that thrust us into discomfort. In other words, there's no one way we respond to rejection. It's highly individual and is usually quite stealthy, and that we may not even recognize we've developed a go-to response to disappointment or to feelings of failure. So let me highlight the common responses first, and then we'll dive into each one with a little bit more definitional explanation. The first is resistance and or avoidance. The second way is hurt feelings. The third is envy. A fourth is guilt and shame. A fifth is social anxiety and embarrassment. And finally, we have sadness and anger. So humans are social creatures. We need community. We thrive in community. It increases our chances for survival. Fear of rejection is a deep human fear that varies in degree and depth in each of us. Rejection confirms our worst fear. We're not good enough, talented enough, or lovable. That's what we tend to believe. Also, to avoid experiencing the hurt brought on by rejection, we avoid the people, places, and things that are likely to trigger us. So rejection threatens our place, participation, and status in our communities of choice. The thought of not belonging, of being considered an outcast, or simply less than, triggers the worst of fears in us, as this slide tells us. These are low feelings, and that they drastically deflate our mood. When we feel them, they bring about a number of self-defeating, limiting beliefs that feed on our self-worth, self-esteem, and self-concept, among many other critical self-attributes that support and sustain our identity. Our brain understands the importance of maintaining a healthy self. In response, it develops a warning signal to alert us when the potential for a break in social ties looms. One way we respond to rejection is to avoid it altogether. Again, our need to be accepted by the people in our community of choice is strong. When we believe it is under threat, we behave in ways that ward off any chance of rejection actually occurring. We sometimes exchange our own identities for others. We mimic the way in which other people act, dress, talk, think, behave, and function, because their acceptance, we believe, keeps us safe. Fear of rejection is a major motivating force for many of us, myself included. It influences our choice in education, our career direction, work behavior, achievement level, interpersonal and marital relationships, family and community life, even the ways in which we spend our downtime. For performers, and I want to be clear here, it is especially necessary for you to be aware of the degree to which you fear rejection, because it can and will affect how you promote yourself as an artist and the way in which you work. And both your self-promotion and your actual performance go a long way in helping others understand how you bring art to life. So that's the first way, resistance and avoidance. The second one is hurt feelings. We can feel unhappiness or sad as a result of rejection. Our personality can sometimes change as a result of rejection. We sometimes withdraw or isolate ourselves from others. And we can feel overwhelmed and overcome with hopelessness as a result of rejection. And it may lead to physical pain in our bodies. Again, rejection hurts, and I hope that you're seeing this, and as we're going through this conversation, it is natural and it is normal. The goal is to recognize the depth and degree to which we respond to rejection and not simply dismiss our hurt as being anything less serious than a physical wound. I think personally, it's important to point out that in some cases, emotional pain can lead to physical symptoms that may or may not have an identifiable physical cause. And those are like the somatic pains that we may experience or feel. Sometimes the headaches, muscle pain, and or other physical discomfort we feel could be directly related to hurt feelings by way of rejection. I want to talk some now about envy, because this is another way in which we may respond to rejection. With envy, we feel discontented by other people's possessions, qualities, or success. We may ruminate on the accomplishments of others, and as a result, our motivation and inspiration decline and or disappear altogether, and we lose perspective of our own talent and ambition. I want to say, again, that it's quite normal to feel low emotions, and envy is one of those low emotions. And we feel it especially when we are confronted with rejection. You might find yourself thinking of the other performer. They don't deserve that part. Or I hope they fail and the show flops. And at the same time, you might find yourself thinking about yourself as being less than or undervalued. Again, all of this is normal. Please do not think you are not a good person because you find yourself frustrated by someone else's success. It's normal to compare ourselves with others, particularly those people with whom we consider as our contemporaries. We envy their achievements because we believe what they've achieved is also possible for us. This is especially the case when it comes to the rejection resulting from someone else getting a part you believed was rightfully yours. Your envy may come from a place that suggests their advantage, whatever it might be, was under-deserved or undeserved. Nevertheless, envy has a deleterious effect on us. When not properly managed, it can lead to feelings of depression, anxiousness, and intense anger, especially if our thoughts and rumination is the thinking over and over and over again on things that happened or could have happened or should have happened. These ruminations are fueled by a sense of injustice or chronic unfairness. We may avoid all those who are responsible for the rejection, complain to others about what happened, which may end up alienating them from us in the process, or we may form alliances with others who are equally against the perceived injustice we experience. Finally, in the absolute worst case scenario, we may end up giving up competing altogether because we believe or begin to believe the cards are stacked against us, and our fear of repeated rejections is just too much for us to bear. So envy, again, is another way in which people may respond to rejection. And I made the statement that we feel cheated as if someone else is getting and or claiming what's rightfully ours. So let's talk about guilt and shame. Rejection can trigger guilt in us when we believe people view us poorly. We will feel guilty for not performing better, for not living up to their expectations. And that should say when we feel guilty for not performing better or for not living up to their expectations. As we discussed earlier regarding our need for community, we emphasize the lengths to which we will go to ensure we do not sever the ties we believe we need to survive in the communities of our choice. When we do not live up to the expectations of our groups, when we do not believe we've adequately done our best, we can quite quickly find ourselves immersed in guilt and shame, two powerful emotions that can, if not addressed, lead us into emotionally turbulent territory. Guilt often occurs when we believe we have violated a standard we accept as law. And for many performers, that standard is excellence. Most performers want to be known for delivering consistently stellar performances, regardless of the setting. Rejection defies this standard and can leave the individual feeling uncentered and insecure. These feelings can easily shift into shame. And shame is an incredibly painful, fear-based emotion that poisons everyone that ingests it. So, shame, as described by Brene Brown, some of you may have heard of her. She's an incredible social worker who's done a lot of research on pain. She says shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us feel unworthy of connection. To be clear, you do not want shame in your life. Further, you do not want shame to metastasize in your life. If you absolutely had to choose between guilt or shame, if there was no other choice, as a response to rejection, choose guilt. Why? Shame makes us direct our focus inward and view our entire self in a negative light. Feelings of guilt, in contrast, result from a concrete action for which we accept responsibility. Guilt causes us to focus our attention on the feelings of others for which we can make reparations. Feelings of shame, on the other hand, are painful and debilitating, affecting our core sense of self, and may invoke a self-defeating cycle of negative emotions, actions, and reactions. While feelings of guilt, though painful, are less destabilizing than shame, they are likely to motivate us in a positive direction. So please, again, choose, if you had to, as a response to rejection, if you find yourself in any of these camps, please choose guilt over shame. And it doesn't make guilt better. It's just that your response to it will be less toxic than shame. Let's talk some about social anxiety and embarrassment, which is another response to rejection. Social anxiety is the fear you won't make the impressions you desire to make in a particular situation. It is, in effect, an anticipatory response, right? It is the fear that the people around you are judging every move you make, and any slip up can mean you have failed, and the person now has confirmed negative, horrible things about you. These are the tape or the story that's playing around in your mind, which in many ways causes you to feel that their rejection of you is justified. To avoid being rejected, people with social anxiety often watch and critique every single action they make and every single word they say to sidestep messing up. Embarrassment occurs when you think you have already conveyed an undesired impression of yourself. Embarrassment is painful and very uncomfortable, but it can also be funny and fleeting, and is also absolutely less isolating than shame. Often embedded in the feeling of embarrassment is a realized assumption that everyone makes mistakes. Shame, on the other hand, leads you to believe you are the mistake. Anger and sadness, which is another quite complicated response to rejection. Sadness from rejection arises when one perceives a loss, and anger arises from rejection when you perceive someone has unjustifiably behaved in ways that threaten your desires or well-being. Much like shame, anger is a powerful emotion. It is characterized by antagonism towards someone or something you feel has deliberately done you wrong. As with all emotions, it is neither good or bad. It simply elicits strong responses from us. At its best, anger can help us express negative feelings and or motivate you to find solutions to your problems. Excessive anger, however, can cause significant problems. Increased blood pressure and other physical changes in your body brought on by anger can cloud our thinking and harm your physical and mental health. It is also, I believe, important to note that anger and sadness can often work as a team, all right? It is easy for one of these emotions to take the place of the other. One is active and the other is passive. Anger gets you fired up, ready to defend yourself and go on the attack, while sadness leaves you feeling a bit exposed, feeling the full extent of the hurt you've endured. If you find that your response to rejection often includes feelings of anger and sadness, it is important that you understand these two emotions can deeply hurt you and those around you. And it may benefit you to seek out support to help you sort through these emotions if it keeps recurring over and over again. So, I want to talk now about some of the emotional signs of rejection and help you to know how you might find yourself in this space where you are struggling with rejection. So these are some of the clear signs of rejection. We have compromised self-esteem and self-concept. So if you are feeling somehow that not so positive about yourself or your outlook of yourself or the beliefs you have about yourself, you may be struggling with rejection in a negative way. Increased people pleasing and approval seeking. And this is, you're doing the things that's going to prevent you from being rejected by being the things that people need you to be. Bouts of rumination, hopelessness, despair, and depression, and that you are caught in a cycle of thinking about what happened and thinking about how the news was reported to you about the rejection, and diving into those feelings of hopelessness and despair and really just beating up on yourself. Outbursts of rage and or panic, where you think about the situation and you get angry again and you get frustrated again and you begin to panic, and again those feelings of hopelessness and despair show up as a result of your response to rejection. Pervasive feelings of failure or believing you've deeply disappointed loved ones. And this can happen to a lot of people, and especially people in the arts, especially those people whose families or people may not have felt that you made the right or the correct decisions. And that rejection that you experience may bring up those feelings of failure or disappointment, not only to yourself, but to those people who are looking at you and expecting you to succeed or not succeed. Unrelenting high expectations of self. This is just talking specifically about perfectionism. And so if you find yourself in this space where you are being highly perfectionistic, then you know that you are dealing with the emotions and frustrations that come on as a result of rejection. Easily embarrassed or ashamed of what has happened or what is normal, right? As well as avoiding social situations. So these are some of the emotional signs to pay attention to recognize that you may be steeped in some of the low emotions of rejection. So now that we've defined rejection, we understand what rejection is, we understand what it looks like, we understand how it operationalize in our bodies, in our mind, in our being. Now I want to talk about how to cope with rejection. And I have a couple of rejection coping strategies that I've put together that I think could help you begin to redirect your energy and tell a different story as you are dealing with rejection, again, which is natural and normal in our lives. And so the first thing that I think is important that you begin to do is to acknowledge how you feel. You could do this by practicing mindfulness. A lot of people have been talking about mindfulness lately, and it really is a practice of becoming quiet and paying attention to what's happening inside of you and what's happening around you. So mindfulness is a really important practice that you can implement that can begin to help you understand how to navigate how you are feeling. Identify how the emotion of rejection is affecting you. So when you're in that mindful state, see if you can identify just how the emotion of rejection, what is it bringing up? How is it affecting you, right? Pay attention to what you are hearing and seeing. Honor the messiness of the surfacing emotions, right? A lot of people want to make disappointment tolerable. And the reality is that it's not tolerable. It is often messy emotions and disappointment. And so when we don't get the part, when we don't get the result that we were hoping for, the emotions that's going to come up will be messy. And so I want you to practice honoring the messiness of those emotions and not to wish them away, not to not want them to exist, because that's when we start getting into a space of compromising how we feel and putting a facade over things that that are normal and natural. We want to be comfortable with the idea that what happened had to happen the way that it happened, and we are okay with it because that's just how life is. Realize your emotions are not who you are. And this is an important thing. Your emotions are what you feel, but they are not who you are. Who you are is much more expansive than what you are feeling. And so you want to remember and keep that in mind, that your emotions are not who you are. You also want to affirm your humanity through your willingness and ability to accept less than pleasurable feelings. This is what makes us humans. What makes us humans is our ability to withstand all of the events and the circumstances that happen within our lives. And so when you allow yourself to feel the low emotions and the high emotions with equal enthusiasm, then you recognize like, oh, this is just a part of living. This is just a part of life. The second thing that I want you to begin to think about and to do is to shift your perspective. Ask yourself, what are you learning from this situation, right? That's a really important question. What can I learn, or what am I learning from this rejection, right? Is your current perspective an old tape on replay? So if you're going to a default response to rejection of anger or envy, right? Is that an old perspective that is coming up over and over and over again, right? So pay attention to the fact that you may have grown past that response, but yet it's still showing up as a current response. What does your current perspective cost you? So holding on to this perspective that rejection is bad and that it shouldn't have happened to me and that it's unfair, what is it costing you to hold on to that perspective? Does your current perspective belong to you or someone else? As we talked about earlier, I need to belong sometimes pushes us into circumstances and positions where we will behave in ways that are not actually ours to begin with. The behaviors are not ours, but they belong to someone else. And so in doing that, we take on the response of someone else and not our response. So the question is, what does your perspective belong, or does that perspective belong to you or someone else? Also, I want you to look at it in this way. How might someone I admire respond to this situation? So if there's a performer in the world that you see and that you admire, how might they respond to rejection or to a situation similar to the one that you are responding to? And finally, how might the hero in your life story respond? right? And the reason why I say that is because when I was thinking about this shift your perspective, I was thinking about the hero's journey, and I was thinking about how the hero goes through several phases to get to the point where they are actually the hero. I want you to begin to recognize that if you are the hero in your own story, how might you respond? Because that might eject you out of this narrow perspective and into a much more expansive and welcoming perspective of, oh, okay, so this is a temporary setback. I'm going to get back on my game and move forward with what needs to happen, okay? So let's learn how to shift our perspective as another strategy for coping with rejection. The next one is to practice psychological honesty. I want you to acknowledge the good and the bad. Sometimes in life, we focus solely on the good things and we push away, ignore, pretend that the bad does not exist. And when we are being psychologically honest, we are acknowledging the good and the bad and keeping them on equal footing. One way you can do this is to perform a SWOT analysis. Some people might have heard of a SWOT analysis before, but it is something that a lot of people in business tend to do, but it's also something that we can do in our personal lives. SWOT is an acronym that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? And so what are the strengths, right? What are your strengths? Where do you shine most, right? Sit down and write down like, okay, these are my strengths. This is where I shine most. These are my superpowers, right? So that's one ways of looking at, beginning this analysis of psychological honesty, and then the next step is, what are your weaknesses? Where can you improve? What might you have, what might be a stumbling block or barrier to your performance in an audition, right? So think about those things and be honest with yourself about what those weaknesses are. What opportunities are out there? How can you benefit? Right? There's a lot of changes that's happening in the world right now with auditioning as a result of COVID-19, and also just ways in which people are using technology to look out and seek out talent for their projects, right? How well versed are you in that medium, right? What opportunities are out there for you to shine in that space, right? How can you benefit through this change, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're saying looking at the opportunities. And you may say there's some new opportunities out there, but this is where I'm weak at. So then I need to build that strength in order to move forward. So just think about what opportunities are out there. And also, what are your threats, right? How are you addressing those threats? Or how are you not addressing those threats, right? So by doing a SWOT analysis, it allows you to sit in a space where you can become more honest, more psychologically honest with yourself, so that you can then know how to respond or how you are responding to rejection. Okay. Next, I want you to challenge your negative self-talk. And this is a really big one that a lot of people are not even aware of the conversations that they're having with themselves about themselves. And so I want you to practice challenging your negative self-talk. Notice when your inner critic is active, right? Pay attention to a point where you feel the pain of rejection and the voice that may surface immediately as a response, right? So notice when your inner critic is active. Remind yourself that thoughts and feelings aren't always real, and they're not always true. They may be valid, but not always true. And so it's important for you to remind yourself that what you're thinking and or what you might be feeling may not necessarily be real or true. It's just that voice that pops up that feeds you with things that aren't necessarily beneficial or healthy for you. cross-check your inner critic and assess what's true. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, ask questions. Is this true? Do I really think this? Am I really feeling this way? Am I really a failure because I didn't get this part, right? That's how you cross-check that critic and really allow yourself to sit in the space where you are not judging yourself harshly for things that are simply not true. Think like a friend. You know, we are so kind and we offer so much grace to those people we love. And if it was a friend of ours who was experiencing pain of rejection, we'd express so much kindness to them, and we'd help them move through the process in a much more gracious way. I want you to do that for yourself. Think like a friend when you are in the throes of rejection, and offer that kindness and grace to yourself. Again, shift your perspective, all right? Work on ways in which you are able to change how you're thinking and how you're positioning your thoughts in that moment. And finally, replace the negative with the positive. Find a way to say, okay, if I'm not a failure, it just means that the part wasn't the right part for me at this time, right? So replace the negative with a positive. At least I had an opportunity to audition for the part, and I was, at the top 3 people who would have gotten the opportunity. So replace the negative with a positive. The 5th thing is, don't take it personally. And this is really hard because rejection, we feel it personally. So, it's natural for us to lean into the personal feelings of rejection, but I don't want you to take it personally. I want you to take it professionally. The reality is that just as you have had the training, develop the skills, and have the access to audition for a number of roles and opportunities, so does tens of thousands of other people in your industry, right? In your profession. They have that ability to audition and be a part of the process of being in a project. So don't take it personally, take it professionally. Recognize that no's and rejections are just a part of the process of being in this industry. And so when you take it professionally, you remove the personal part from yourself, right? Don't jump to conclusions, right? Don't jump into a space of it must be because, all of those different things, because that's where you're going to find yourself in a space that is completely unhealthy and you don't want to be there. So don't jump to conclusions. Explore your locus of control. And locus of control is really your center of control. What are the things that you have power over in the decision-making process? And what are the things that people outside of you have power over, right? And once you begin to understand what your locus of control is, it becomes a lot easier to not take it personally and to lean more into the understanding that within my profession, no's are a common part of the common part of the story. Okay. Next, I want you to let it go, and that's obviously easier said than done. But I want you to think about and figure out how you can release the negative energy of rejection, because holding it inside of your person does a lot of damage. So if you can figure out a way to release that negative energy, I encourage you to do those things, because it is important and necessary to, as quickly as you can, right? And not by just getting over it, but as quickly as you can, working through the emotions and figuring out ways to let it go. Stop blaming yourself, right? So once you begin to let it go, there's no need to blame yourself. Stop blaming others. I don't want you to blame other people for what's happening. And also fall apart if you need to. I think we live in a society now where people feel it is embarrassing to fall apart. And the reality is there are going to be moments where you need to fall apart because you really wanted the part. And if you really wanted that part and you did not get that part, it's okay to fall apart, right? So do it, but trust that you're going to be okay, right? Fall apart, but trust that you're going to be okay. And notice when you're revisiting the rejection, and that's that rumination. Notice when you're coming back around and you are revisiting something that you have released, that you're working to stop blame and you've fallen apart and you're trusting that you're going to be okay. But then there may be something that triggers you to or reminds you that, oh, wait, I didn't get that part. And then you are back in the throes of feeling loss and hopeless, right? So notice when you are revisiting the rejection and make peace with your decision, right? Be okay with who you are and where you are in that moment. Make peace with your decision that this is not the end of my opportunities. It's not the end of my career. This is just a snapshot, a moment in time, and I'm going to be okay. All right. So make peace with your decision. I want you to also reconnect with your purpose, right? Remember why you chose your career. It's a very important thing to do, right? So after you let it go, reconnect with your purpose. Remember why you chose your career. Revisit your SWOT analysis, right? Go back through your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, right? And determine how you need to readjust your current plan by adding the information that you've gathered from this SWOT analysis, right? So revisit that plan and then begin to adjust what you have been doing. I want you also to think boldly and broadly. I find that sometimes people think in very narrow spaces, and I want you to expand your thinking around what you are attempting to do and how you can achieve your goal that led you into your career. So think boldly and broadly as you are reconnecting with your purpose. The final thing that I want you to do is dust yourself off and try again. Admittedly, for those of you who may be familiar with the singer Aaliyah, I was thinking about her when this bullet came up, right? So to dust yourself off and try again. And there are a number of quotes that I have here that I want to just say to you all. So therefore, you are able to just do that, because I think it's understandable what that means, to dust yourself off and try again. But here we have a quote that says, there are years that ask questions and years that answer. So recognize that you may be in a space where you are experiencing a sequence of rejections, but recognize that that may be years where you're asking questions, where there's uncertainty or there's things that you still have to learn and know and do, right? And then there are years of answers, right? That's the time when you go with that SWOT analysis and you do the things that you need to do that's going to get you to the space where you are able to get the results and the outcomes that you are seeking to do. So I love this idea of thinking that there are years that ask questions and years that answer. This next quote is, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice, that's quiet, but it should be quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow, right? And that is dusting yourself off and trying again, is that you will try again tomorrow. Do not give up, right? That's what courage is. And finally, this quote, ever tried, ever failed? No matter, try again. Fail again, fail better. And that's the thing. When you're failing better, you're getting closer to the yes. You're getting closer to the outcome. You're getting closer to the results that you wish to have in your life. And so, in summary, I want to say this. We cannot escape rejection. We know this from the discussion that we've had today, that we cannot escape rejection. It is a natural part of our lives. Rejection always hurts. I want people to stop thinking or believing that small rejections don't hurt as much as big rejections. It registers in the brain as the same as pain, as breaking your arm. It just hurts. It just does. Suffering is a natural and normal part of human life, right? And this is something that I want people to become comfortable with understanding, that suffering is natural and normal, right? We can't escape it. It's always going to be here. It's always going to hurt. We are hardwired to resist suffering and rejection, right? There's a part of us that doesn't want to feel any sort of pain. And so when we feel it, or if we are in threat of feeling it, we push away from it. So we are hardwired to resist suffering and rejection. But we are incredibly resilient. That's the positive piece of this, right? Although we don't like it and it's a part of our lives, we are incredibly resilient. And we have equally within us the ability to withstand and thrive beyond rejection, especially if we acknowledge how we feel, we shift our perspective, we practice psychological honesty, we challenge our negative self-talk, we don't take things personally, we let things go, we reconnect with our purpose, and we try again, okay? So I wanna thank you again for having me today to have this conversation about rejection with you all. And again, I want to remind you that the Actors Fund is here. We are a resource to help you to begin figuring out ways to navigate rejection if you're finding that you can't navigate the journey on your own. So I am going to turn it back over to you, Gabrielle. Thank you so much.
You know, Christopher, I have to tell you, I was smiling, hearing what you're saying in recognition, and I was taking notes. I mean, because we do all go through this journey together, right? And it's about really knowing that it's just a piece of a journey, and that it doesn't mean it's the end of the road. It's just a part of it. I really appreciate what you shared. The things that I honor the messiness of emotions, I thought was great. Take it professionally, not personally. That is such a great, concept there. And my locus of control. What can I control, and what really I have to kind of give up to God or higher power, whatever that is, and know that I have nothing. I really think that's fabulous. And people are responding. I'm getting in questions, and I know that we have a short amount of time, so I'm going to try to get to some of the questions that you might be able to give some insight to. So thank you. The first, really great. I heard a lot today about mental health, but what about physical health? Does that also play a factor here?
Absolutely. And that's the piece that I was trying to express, that rejection hits us emotionally. It hits our emotions. It hits that space that in our brain doesn't differentiate, again, from physical pain and emotional pain. It's just pain to the brain, right? Chronic ruminating on rejection can lead to physical ailments. It can lead to chronic headaches, muscle spasms, stiffness, high blood pressure, all types of things can come as a result of it. So this is why it is so important and critical for us to be mindful of how we are responding to the emotion of rejection, right? How are we responding to it? Because if we're not careful, we could move ourselves into physical spaces or physical elements that we may not even connect back to an emotional origin. So that's why it's important for us to begin to think about how do we respond to rejection.
Thank you. Actually, I know people who've gotten very sick because they're not really dealing with what's going on inside. Thank you for that. Another question, and it really is about the mental health. You're talking about mindfulness, but how do you know when to seek professional help? And are there therapists out there who can specifically speak to or understand my journey as an aspiring singer? This is a singer.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some of the things that I talked about. If you find that you are in bouts of feeling hopeless and sad, and that things are never working out for you, or you feel as if you're trying and trying and other people are getting the opportunities and you can't escape those feelings and those emotions, it's important for you to begin to take a step back and again do that cross check. Is this true? Is this real? Are these my thoughts? Is this my inner critic? You know, there is some advice out there to give that inner critic a name, right? So, you know, for me, I may say, Jonathan is acting up today. Jonathan is out of control today. That may be the name that I assign to my inner critic. So therefore, I recognize when I am out of myself and in that space of pain. And yes, there are plenty of therapists and people out there that can support you specifically in addressing the needs that performing artists experience when they're dealing with rejection. And this is a community, for better or for worse, that get know a lot. And so there are people who specifically work with performing arts professionals to help you navigate your journey within this industry and to develop better coping mechanisms of responding to the feelings of the low feelings that come from rejection.
That's good. Low feelings. I like that.
Mhm.
That's what they are. Somebody asked the question, because this is really big, particularly coming out of this pandemic, we're feeling, what about financial stress? How do I stay optimistic when I'm trying to make sure the bills get paid? And I know you hear this a lot at the actors.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, financial stress of any kind is not good. It can be a motivating force, but if it lingers and it becomes chronic, again, it can lead to all types of physical, emotional, and mental breakdowns. And so I would say that again, we have to find the bright spots in our lives and in our stories. We have to figure out what are the places or what are the spaces where I am succeeding. And it's not about distracting ourselves as much as it is, again, that psychological honesty. It's doing that SWOT analysis. Is recognizing where, you know, it's not focusing on the pieces that are, again, the low feelings or the low emotions. It is really about helping us know that this is a moment, this is a cloud, this is a period, right? It will move and I will move along with it, right? And so that's the piece that I want people to remember and to focus on and not get so caught up on, because the pandemic has really devastated the arts community. It's devastated the arts community. And there are performing artists and entertainment professionals across this country, across the world, who are figuring out their next steps. And the goal here is to recognize that it's not you that has failed and were rejected. It's a disease that impacted our society that caused us to stop, and we're going to move again, right? So that's the idea that I would want people to take away.
That's a great takeaway. It's wonderful. I do have one more question and then we're going to have to end, but it's not the ending. People will still be reaching out. But one of the questions is, I moved across the country to make it big, but alas, I'm still working a side job. I haven't booked a gig, though my family's been cheering me on. How do I share the truth with them without the fear of letting them down? And I think that's really also that sense of our self-image based on what we think others think of us. But it's painful for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. It is incredibly painful for a lot of people, and it is incredibly common, again, because we have this innate desire to belong, to be a part of, to make, uh, to help others see us in a positive light. Anything that is contrary to that, we see as a
Negative.
As a negative, yeah, we see it as something that is inescapable. And I would say to that person who moved across the country and you're afraid of telling other people the truth, your family, your friends, your loved ones, the truth about what is really happening in your career, is for you to get into a space where you recognize what is normal about having an episodic career, right? That you become comfortable in understanding that there are periods of time where I am going to work as a performer, and there are periods of time when I'm not going to work as a performer. And once you become okay with that, then you can articulate that story to other people who can and will have to be okay with what you experience as a day-to-day norm, right? That you do have multiple streams of income, not because of a lack of love or ambition or talent, but just because the industry is set up in a way where multiple streams of income is often necessary for people with episodic careers. And that's just how it is. So the more grounded you become in your feelings of okay, being okay with your career, the easier it becomes to articulate that to other people. And your confidence helps them to know that you are okay and that they do not have to worry about you. Now, they may still worry, but that's not your business. Their worry is not your business, okay? But that's what I would offer.
Thank you. That's such great advice. I have to say also that, be proud that you took a job, that you're looking to take care of yourself instead of just waiting for life to happen. It's a real statement about who you are, that you're tenacious, that you're self-caring, and that you're allowing yourself then ultimately the freedom to really pursue your career, knowing that you can always take care of yourself, because our careers ebb and flow. So yes. I think that's beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Christopher, for your words and your insight. It's so meaningful to everybody who's listening right now, because it's a universal journey we share together. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, everybody, if you want to learn more about the Actors Fund and all of their services, please visit their website at actorsfund.org. That is actorsfund.org. Very special thanks to all of you who've been tuning in every week for our President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live streams. If you haven't already, while you're here, please subscribe to SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel. Get updates on the great content that we've been posting. We've had wonderful guests, great information. With that, have a beautiful day and see you soon. Thank you again, Christopher, for your time.
Thank you.